My usual spot just round there really has been overtaken by termites, so I don't want to disturb them. Therefore the light may not be that good, but it's nice and in the shade. There's also quite a breeze, so I'll try and shelter this mic thing. Namaste, hello and welcome. Hello friends, brothers and sisters in the Dharma, brothers and sisters in birth, aging, sickness and death, because after all, that's what we all are. All beings are subject to this truth. And there I will begin with looking at what hopefully keeps this channel appropriate, relevant and interesting to you, the subscribers, whom make regular comments, send in questions, which I then can... Oh, this is no good. It's gale force wind blowing up. Maybe it will pass. Or maybe it's a cyclone. The clouds, the sky is clear. But you're sorry if the motion's making you seasick. You're just on a chair, balanced on a chair opposite me there. We'll continue. So your contributions are very valuable. They are what make this channel. It's your channel. I just contribute to it by talking for a little while, based on what you suggest, your comments and your questions. So with that in mind, I will try and begin. Excuse me. So we have this first question. Is this a Thai chant quite similar to Itipiso Bhagava Arahan Sama Sambuddho, but I've never heard before? Well, it is, if it's me you're referring to and the chanting on this channel, it is exactly that. Itipiso Bhagava Araham Sama Sambuddho. This is the Pali language chanting, reflecting the 9 qualities of the Buddha, most commonly heard chant in Theravada Buddhism. However, it is pronounced, I'm thinking you are possibly from maybe Sri Lanka, and each different country, culture, even regions and traditions within countries and cultures have different ways of pronouncing the prescribed chants, even preliminary homage to the Buddha, Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Sama Sambuddhassa, which is usually said 3 times, can be heard in very different ways. Of course, we don't know exactly the accent of people back in the time of the Buddha, 2,600 and so years ago. And like in the Western world, where we use Latin as a basis language for many things, especially in the Catholic religion, in the West we tend to pronounce it phonetically, not knowing what accent. It was probably Italian, but we don't know that for sure how it would have sounded, so we just pronounce it phonetically. Out of this habit alone, I have that tendency to pronounce Pali words phonetically without any kind of imposed accent, pause or break. So my chanting might be again somewhat different to others that you've heard. I've also been to lots of different monasteries and been subjected to chanting in lots of different monasteries, and therefore it's a mixture of all. So Itipiso Bhagava Araham Samma Sambuddho Vija Charana Sampano Sugato Loka Vitu Anutaro Purisadhamma Sarati Sata Deva Manusa Nambuddho Bhagavati is really how I say it, but it could be said in so many different ways. So that is, you're correct, it's not necessarily Thai, but it is the chanting used in Thailand, and but throughout Theravada Buddhism across the world. And I've sent you a link for that chanting book, just so you can have that and have a look at it if it's of interest to you. I hope this is not too disruptive, this whole wind thing. I'm not sure why the phone is moving around so much in the wind. I suppose it's on a not flat surface. It took I don't think I'll answer that one. It doesn't seem very appropriate. Or I don't understand it. Greetings, listen to. Oh, right. May I know how you keep track of the time while meditating? The 3 to 6 a.m., 12 to 3 p.m, and the 10 to 12 midnight. It's actually 9 to 12 midnight. But we're going to cover that again in a question I know is coming up if I get round to that today, a recent question about my timetable. Apparently I missed out about 8 hours, but I didn't. I may have just phrased it incorrectly. That's correct. I mean, my formal sitting times are 3 till 6 in the morning, then perhaps 9 till 12 after, well, not 9 till 12, no, that's when I'm eating. 3 till 6. 12 till 3, yes, that's correct, in the afternoon. If I'm not meditating after the meal from 12 till 3, I'm either walking somewhere or doing this, making this video and replying and looking at the comments or emails, which only takes an hour, maybe a couple. I mean, it's not rigid, it's not in stone. I live alone. I meditate as much as I possibly can. That's my aim. How do I keep track of time? Well, I've no need to. That's just how it works out. I wake up at 3 o'clock naturally. I don't set an alarm. That's when I wake up. And the first thing I do is I sit and meditate, and that generally just finishes around 6 o'clock. Now, since I've been doing puja at 6 a.m, I have, out of precaution, set an alarm, say for... Actually, I haven't. Be honest with you, I did at first, but it's not been necessary since. It tends just to finish around 10 to, quarter to 6. I'm just finish my meditation, go to the chanting, and then again in the afternoon. There's no deadline, nothing's going to happen, so I'm not having to clock watch. I think it's a shame. Obviously people have to set an alarm. But for me, not having to, it's an advantage, because if I'm enjoying my meditation, it's a good meditation. All meditation is good, but sometimes, we can really be deep in samadhi and it can be a wonderful experience. Who wants an alarm to disturb them from that? So, no, I don't need to keep track of the time. It just roughly works out that way. And that's about 9 hours of my day. So I'll just go into that other question, as it's kind of related. It's the most recent question. Maybe not. Maybe I don't have it here. They said, here we go. So, what do you do for the other 8 hours? Well, there isn't really another 8 hours, because I sleep. You say sleep for 3 hours. I sleep for a bit more than that. I normally fall asleep these days at around 10:30, 11 o'clock. So my 9 till 12 meditation is not usually until midnight, except on Uposatha days when I might meditate even longer than midnight. Then I'll sleep until 3. So 4 to 3 hours of sleep, 4 hours. If I fell asleep earlier than 10, it doesn't matter. Again, there's no rigid schedule when you're living alone. This is the advantage of solitude. But my whole goal and aim is to spend as much time able to meditate, whether I feel like it or not, able to meditate as possible. And then the best time to meditate is when you don't want to, because this is the discipline, this is the training. And often meditation can be enhanced by that, because you are really putting effort in to sitting and dropping everything that is distracting, detracting from meditation itself. It's additional discipline and additional progressive training. So this 8 hours, I'm not sure where we get that from, but say I wake up at 3 until 6, meditate, then puja, then I go on alms round. By the time I get back from that, it's about 8:30, 9 o'clock in the morning. Then I have an hour or so to do some laundry, clean an item of my robes, because I have to try and clean one part of them each day, because I can't clean them all because I have no other clothes. So having 3 items of clothing, really 3 robes plus these things, but these only take seconds to dry, so anksas, that doesn't count. But my 3 main robes, one part, the lower part, upper part or outer part, I have 2 lower parts, 2 sabongs, and the outer robe, the sangata, you hardly ever need to wash because you don't really use it. But so these 3 items, one needs to be washed. That doesn't take long, but this takes me through till about eating time. I eat at 10 or 11 o'clock, and then that takes me through, by the time I've cleaned my bowl, till midday. So that's the morning gone. And I've included in that morning 3 hours of meditation from when I woke up until 6, and then morning chanting. Then I do this at 12 until doesn't take until about 3, but often there's something I need to do, go into the village, or something I need to do around here, sweep out my kuti, maybe, I don't know, reply to an email or something like that. And then I have, from 3 till 6, I have my cold sweet drink at about 4 o'clock. And then I have from 3 till 6 to meditate, 6, then evening puja again. Then in the evening, I do have a spare few hours. I try to make a spare few hours to listen to some Dharma talks, or some Dharma questions and answers, or read, or put some study in. And I can fill other parts of the day with that also, very much by the same means as you, on YouTube, my teachers. But I think I've spoken about that in some detail recently. It's just I may have been not clear on the timings. But I don't have, unfortunately, my answer to you was a bit short and curt. I just said, what do you do with the extra 8 hours left? I said meditation, because if I had that spare time, that's what I'd be doing. Or this part of my day, which is, I consider, part of my practice. Okay, right, wind willing, let's carry on. Where did I get to? That was, do I set an alarm about timing? No, I don't need to. I mean, obviously in lay life you would need to, because you have responsibilities, but if I continue meditating, if it's coming up to lunchtime, someone's going to say, come and call me and say your lunch is ready, and nothing else is that important. If someone arrives, they tend to come without any kind of notice anyway, and the kapya or one of the samaneras, the novice monks here, would just come and they don't actually disturb me, because someone sat waiting for quite some time the other day. So, it's best to send a message, an email or something if you're coming, because they won't necessarily interrupt me. However, that's timing. Right. Ask how. Yeah, there's one subscriber who sends me very good questions, but it takes me quite a while to work out what the question is. So I've just skipped one. I'm going to skip another one and leave that for later. And I must make a mental note to look at it before I sit here and in front of you. Yes, I have mental stillness, but it can be diluted by sins. I can meditate for hours. I have no thoughts. Well, it sounds good if you can meditate for hours and have no thoughts. That is mental stillness. So there's a contradiction there. But you have mental stillness diluted by sins. Well, there's no sins. You've made mistakes in the past. And hopefully you can make a determination from now on that those mistakes you won't repeat. Any actions, unwholesome actions of body, speech and mind that you might call sins are not something that can be changed, forgiven, taken away. We don't have absolution and this kind of forgiveness in Buddhism. We accept our bad karma as having results which will come to fruition at some point. But the way to make that less disadvantageous in the future is to do as much good karma now as possible. That will dilute, very good word, will dilute the power of your bad karma, your past mistakes. Like salt in a glass of water would taste, whereas salt in a large vessel of water would not taste at all. So whatever the sin, the more good you do, the better outweighed it is as far as future consequences are concerned. But those few future consequences remain. They are there. So don't let it trouble your mind. If you'll keep sila from now on, keep the moral precepts, so doing no harm, stealing, sexual misconduct, lying or taking of intoxicants, then you can rest assured that you are doing your best. And then this idea of sins diluting that peace, that stillness, should not be a problem. You cannot change the past. This is the main thing to understand there. It's done. No one can take that away. But you can change the future by behaving well from now on. So, but it sounds, if you can meditate for hours with no thoughts, then you really are fortunate. And the troubles that are haunting you from the past, I use that term haunting very loosely, you're thinking about, papancha, just let it go, stop thinking. I know it's easy to say let it go, it's a bit, what's that word? Anyway, overused, let's say. But I mean it, it's done. What can you do about it? You can't go back and change the past. So accept that. So it's acceptance, not so much letting go, it's acceptance. But what you can do is change the future. And if you're sitting, meditating for hours, you're doing a very good job of changing your future and your future mind states for the better. Right. So someone is finding a carnival, that's a good way of describing it, a carnival of ideas expressed on YouTube, but find nothing quite as realistic as Buddhists. And you very kindly say, like me. What's the question? So it's not really a question there, but I understand you're saying yes. I mean, of course. And in the Buddha's time, he was asked in one of the suttas, someone, there's so many teachers out there all teaching this and teaching that, and they are the best. And there still is to this day in the world, and in India particularly, but in the world there are many philosophers, philosophies, religions, and heads of those religions, large and small, all of different kinds. Which is right? Now, what the Buddha said was, well, don't take my word for it, don't believe me. This is what I practice, this is how you do it, go away and try it for yourself. Don't believe any teacher, don't look at this carnival of ideas and get carried away. Accept that there are very many varying views and opinions, and they are just that, varying views and opinions. What is important is the truth, and only you can experience the truth from your own experience. You have experienced suffering. Now, when you can delve deeply and understand the cause of that suffering, you are able to experience the end of suffering. And the Buddha teaches us how to do that through the Noble Eightfold Path of right view, right intention, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right meditation. Practicing that, sila, moral virtue, samadhi, meditation, panya, wisdom, is the way to be liberated, to be free from the desire, underlying desire of greed, hatred, and ignorance or confusion, delusion that fuels this suffering. Take away the fuel and the suffering will go away. The fire will cool, the fire will go out, and you will be free from suffering in this lifetime. Now, the Buddha taught this not in a prophetic way, this is how it will be if you believe in me, but in this way, here's the instructions, go and try it for yourself. And that's all. Try it for yourself, and the carnival of ideas becomes irrelevant, because you find out and establish the truth, and you come to know the end of suffering, only you alone, yourself, with the guidance of a teacher, but without the need of belief in what that teacher is saying. So that's how we deal with this, all these different opinions. Okay, a few questions. Namaste, a few questions. Have you learnt to speak Thai? No. Oh, I didn't need to say no, shouting down the microphone like that. It was just the way my head went. I'll put this there, maybe is better. No, I haven't learned to speak Thai. It's a very difficult language to learn to speak, and really, because I go to different countries, I've not thought it a very useful. We've just heard about my structure of the day and my timetable. I do have time to learn a language, of course, but this is not, as far as I can see, any use or as a very useful use of that time. So for instance, if I'd learnt to speak Thai, what use would it be now here in India? If I'd learnt to speak Hindi, what use would it be? Well, it's not a lot of use in India, because they speak all different languages in India. Hindi and English are the common languages. English is as readily available as Hindi, but unless you learn to speak in this state, Karnataka, Canada, neither are that useful. So Kannada language I could have learnt to speak. I've been here for 3 years in this same state, but what use would it be to me in Sri Lanka next month or in Thailand? None whatsoever. So I haven't bothered. It's laziness, yes. It's also quite hard when you're older to learn to speak another language. Pali is our common Buddhist language, like Latin is the common Catholic religion language. It's a useful language to know the meaning of various words. It's not a conversational language, although I'm sure there are those who can speak to each other in Pali. But it's where I would find use and put any effort in terms of learning language into that direction only. So I didn't learn to speak Thai. How does your stomach handle heat? Hello, food intake and walking. Well, I don't find heat has any effect on my stomach. Maybe on my head. If I get the sun on my head, I might get a bit of headache and feel a little bit nauseous. That's sunstroke. But if I cover my head or just stay in the shade, that mitigates that problem. What's this thing? Low food intake. This is something we get used to. Knowing that when we do eat, we're hungry, satisfying that hunger, and understanding that anything that arises in connection with thoughts of eating and food later on during the day, eating only once a day in the morning as we do, is generally more out of sensual desire for a taste and experience, or out of boredom to fill a lack of interesting things to be doing, than actual hunger. You don't starve to death as long as you eat one substantial meal in the day. And once you've been doing that for so many years, and I've been doing that now for quite some years, over 8 years, your body is quite used to it. It's not a problem at all. So that I do get hungry, but I have to really look at that hunger and say, is this just desire, sensual desire for something to do, for some nice food, something I like the idea of? Or am I really genuinely hungry? If I start to feel faint, there are 4 things we can have. Some butter, well, not butter, clarified butter, ghee, honey, jaggery, which is unrefined sugar, or oil. Those 4 things. A little spoonful of one of those will settle the tummy, give you some energy. Just a little sugar will give you some energy and stop you fainting. This is just not starvation. Your body cells aren't being eaten up because you have no nutrition. It's your blood sugar levels, and they're easily increased by those 4 chatu madhu, 4 allowable tonics that we can have in the afternoon should you need them. A spoonful of honey is the best thing if you can get it, or alternatively a spoonful of sugar. Never got on with a spoonful of oil or a spoonful of clarified butter. That's not very nice. Oh, and then you ask, are you allowed to learn things such as language? Well, you're allowed to do what you like. I mean, you're encouraged to practice Sila, Samadhi, Panya, which doesn't really include, I suppose Panya could be understanding languages, learning languages is a way of developing wisdom, but more of an intellectual level. So yes, we're allowed to learn languages, but that's not what we're monks for, to learn languages. Maybe there are that do, and they like to translate into different languages the scriptures, which is a very valuable and useful, meritorious activity. But they are a certain kind of monk who prefer that activity rather than maybe spending their day meditating in samadhi. And there are monks arguably that will do both, of course. But I will say, I think the more you fill your mind with an intellectual learning activity, the less able it is to really become clear and settle during meditation and develop samadhi and jhanas. From that you will develop enormous clarity of vision and vipassana qualities, insight into the realities, the truth of life. And this is by far the deepest and most useful wisdom to establish. So that's answered those questions, thanks. Have you been to China? Would you like to visit? I haven't really thought about it. I have been to China, but not by choice. I was stranded in Chengdu once when the airport I was going to back in England on my way from Thailand was closed for a problem, and therefore the flight was stopped that was going from my connecting flight from Chengdu. So I was accommodated in Chengdu for a short while. It wasn't a very pleasant experience, but that was nothing to do with it being China. It was the fact that not having a transit visa or a visa for China, you're held under armed guard and locked in a hotel room, and you're not allowed to go anywhere. They have no internet there. They do have internet, but it's their own. It's not our internet. You can't, with your devices or whatever. I mean, it's not that I wanted to go onto the internet. I wanted to find out when my airport was going to be open. So the person I was sharing the room with was on his smartphone, and I was saying, look, how long are we going to be here for? And of course he couldn't find this out. It's a closed shop. But regardless of that, so I've not thought about it. I'm sure China is very big, isn't it? It's a very beautiful country. I've flown over it many times, and it looks so interesting from up above because it's cloudless, and you see all these velvety green, they're like mountains, as big as mountains, but they look like smooth hills, much like you see on those old China plates, those blue China plates of Chinese landscapes that you think are kind of storybook pictures, but it really looks like that from an airplane above. Very smooth and rounded, and a lot of windmills, very big windmills, because from 35,000 feet, if you can see them looking large and clear, they must be huge windmills. But China's an interesting country. It's a very Buddhist country, Mahayana Buddhism, and then there's some other aspects of Buddhism there. And it would be interesting to go there. So yeah, I mean, maybe one day. I think it's not that easy as far as visas are concerned, generally speaking, but for a short trip it's probably quite feasible and possible. And then you do later on say, I asked you why, and you said because you live there and you'd like to travel with me around a bit of China or something like that. So yeah, well, maybe one day, nothing's out of the question. Someone says, now a comment, I don't support you with money, food or any other form of service, but I am interested in Buddhism. Is it okay for me to tag along? Of course, you support me with your interest in Buddhism. You support me by watching this channel. You support me with your comments, with your questions. Actually, this subscriber makes usually some very interesting and valid and useful comments, which are also very encouraging to me doing this. I don't do this for my own benefit. It does benefit me, discussing the Dharma, but the primary incentive is the encouragement from people whom want to listen to my sharing of this experience, being a Buddhist monk, coming from a non-monastic background and even a non-Buddhist background, and then quite a radical change in my life, sharing this with other people. Whilst it's of interest, then this is why I continue to do it. So no, you support me in so very many other ways other than literal dana of food requisites or money, which are really the least important. The most important is your interest in hearing the Dharma. Is there anything else I said? No, so yeah, please tag along. Please continue to do that. You're not tagging along. You're very much a major part of this community. This particular subscriber saying that is a regular contributor to the comments section. So thank you for your comments. Next is onions and garlic are considered anti-pranatic. Now I think, I could be wrong, pranatic is spiritual development. So anti-pranatic is anti-spiritual development. Well, are considered, that is the operative word, they're considered. And from my own experience, I've lived in countries now for some years where, and even in my own country as a vegetarian, where the majority of my diet is based on onions and garlic and a lot of those what are considered anti-pranatic foods. And it's not really, I've not tried not to have them to see what the difference would be, but it's not having a negative effect on my practice as far as I know. And I'm not sure how food would be quite bland without those things, possibly. But there have been times I don't have much say. I don't get too excited about food. I eat to live, one meal a day. Here I've eaten every day the same. White boiled rice, about 4 big spoons of it, 2 or 3 ladles of dal, which is a runny dal soup, if you can imagine that. It's there's a whole lot of cows just wandering this way at the moment. I wish I could turn the camera around, like on its own accord, so you could see. But the lady does have them on a string. The farmer. Anyway, if I get trampled, goodbye. There is a sutta of this man who went to the Buddha to ordain with his bowl and his robes. And anyway, it's a long story, but he got trampled by a cow and became an arahant. So it's not the worst way to go. And it happened in India, and it can happen here because there are a lot of cows. 1, 2, 3, 4 staring at me right now. Now they're eating grass. They're happy. So yes, anti-pranatic food. I know in the Ayurvedic based philosophies, which are a big part of Hinduism here in India, yes, food is very important in many respects. So I can understand the considerations. There are some practical reasons why maybe some Buddhists don't eat garlic, maybe. In the Mahayana traditions, in the northern traditions, they say it's, I've heard various reasons. I don't think any of them are necessarily that based on fact, so I can't really say more than that, really. No, sorry. Let's see. Okay. And then there's the timetable question. We've done that. Can you take video on how to step or path of SOTÄPANNA stage? So can I make a video of how to become a SOTÄPANNA, a stream enterer? SOTÄPANNA is the first stage of enlightenment, stream enterer. All of these videos are about that very subject, becoming free from suffering in this lifetime by the practice of Sila, Samadhi, Panya, as I've just mentioned in the first part of the video, so I won't repeat that. Go and practice that if you wish to become enlightened. The first stage being SOTÄPANNA, or stream enterer, means you have relinquished all personality view. You understand the principle of anatta, not self, that you no longer think this physical body and even this thinking mind or this personality you perceive as yourself, made up of causes and conditions like your nationality, sex, job, age, family connections, role in life, religion, interests, likings and dislikings. All of these things you perceive as you, as a personality. When you can see how transient and intangible those things are. For instance, I was a certain kind of person, a man still, but a person in my previous life within this life, a businessman living in the West with a family. Now I'm a monk living in the East without a family. I still have a family, but they're grown up and I have no responsibility for them or them me, and see them quite little. But no business, no work, no money, just these few items I have on my body at the moment as clothing. I'm a very different individual. So what was my personality isn't that now. So we drop that. Secondly, the abandonment of rites and rituals. This belief that praying, chanting, bowing, anything we're doing perceived as devotional practices which could be seen as prayer or worship isn't that. It is mindfully reminding ourselves of the Buddha's teachings, reinforcing those by reflection, reinforcing those teachings in order to teach us how to practice towards liberation or freedom from suffering in this lifetime. If we believe that by praying, bowing, chanting will bring us good luck, happiness, wealth and success, pass our next exam or our driving test, or make us win the lottery, then this is clinging to, attaching to rites and rituals. This has to be abandoned in its entirety with the full wisdom and understanding that that will not happen. You are responsible for your own liberation, your own success. There is no higher power in Buddhism for that purpose. And then finally, no doubt about that, the aforementioned, but primarily no doubt about the Four Noble Truths, that there is suffering. We can't doubt that, it's there all the time surrounding us. But there is a cause of suffering. There has to be no doubt as to the understanding of that cause of suffering. No doubt as to the belief that there is an end of suffering, and no doubt as to the path to the end of suffering. Again, that I mentioned at the beginning of this video, the Noble Eightfold Path, or the practice of Sila, Samadhi, Panya. When you have established those three things through this practice, keep watching all of these videos, and this is all I'm talking about. So I can make another video as I have. There's one if you go how to reach SOTÄPANNA, or just put in English monk and SOTÄPANNA and then it will come up maybe in the search, I'm not sure, about the 4 stages, because after that then there is Satanagami, Anagami, and then Arahant is the final stage of liberation, which are the relinquishment or the cutting of the other 7 fetters. Fetters being ties to rebirth into samsara, this life, this existence. The first 3 being Sakkaya Ditthi, personality view, the rites and rituals, and the doubt. Those 3 are the other ties. But throughout those stages of enlightenment, some of these defilements, based on the root causes of greed, hatred and delusion, will still be there right up until the final stage of liberation, arahantship. There will still be some ill will, anger. There will still be some conceit, so opinion of yourself, whether it be positive or negative in comparison to others. So it's a very gradual process, and it's likewise a gradual process of learning. It doesn't happen just like that. So I can't make one video step by step, do this. If I was to, it would be, say, you just sit here now and do absolutely nothing else. Having nourished yourself, do nothing else until you need to nourish yourself again tomorrow. But you sit here now for the next 24 hours. If you need to sleep, just doze off, but sitting here. And don't move. Do nothing else. But many people without a lot of previous training are not going to be able to do that. But if you do that, and you're able to do that for 7 days, each and every day, with just mindfulness of the breath alone, then you will surely attain to SOTΑPANNA in that shorter amount of time, even shorter time than that. And the Buddha says this in the suttas. It's a possible thing for anyone to do. But of course, practically and mentally, people aren't inclined to do that. So yes, I will continue making videos which are all along those lines. Thank you for your comment and the suggestion. Right. I think we're okay with the wind. The phone appears to be in the same roughly position as to where it began, and it looks like it's still facing me. Can you see the cows behind me? I hope so. It says here, usually monasteries are full of stray animals, so I must have mentioned something about animals previously. Okay. Well, often they are, yes. I wouldn't say usually. The ones generally I go to, forest monasteries, aren't so, but certainly city monasteries are. They're less. The city monasteries are more practically based for lay people. They do all the chanting, the blessings, the weddings, the funerals, and they receive a lot more visitors and dana. And often tourism in Buddhist countries goes towards the orange-coloured city monks and monasteries, because really us forest monks in these dowdy old brown robes, which are patched up and falling to bits, living in just a dark old forest, aren't that interesting to tourism. So we get very few visitors. Now, the reason a lot of monasteries are full of stray animals is because people know they can leave their abandoned pets or abandon their pets at a monastery, and someone's going to care for it, because they're not going to be, they might be ignored, but they won't be harmed. They'll be protected. So they do accumulate some stray dogs and stray cats from time to time. But of course, this isn't the purpose of monks. They're not allowed to keep pets, particularly as pets, but we have to care for them. So we do encourage them to go on their own way when they turn up, if they can. But in the forest monasteries, this is most less likely, because they're not on the usual route for tame dogs. There may be wild dogs, but they look after themselves anyway, and they're always just passing through. In my last monastery, we had a couple of dogs, but I think they'd arrived with maybe a monk of some time ago or something like this. I don't know how they would have arrived, but there were just these few dogs. I think you might remember Bong Bong and Bang Bang, and here we had Tom Tom, who's no longer here. But I wouldn't say it's a bit of a generalisation to say all monasteries are full of stray animals, because it's really just the city monasteries and the popular ones you see, where there are quite a few. There are many more monasteries than the ones you see. For generally as tourists visiting these main monasteries, you could say that for every one they visited, there's probably 10 that they would never consider visiting, because they're just one monk living in a forest alone. This is a monastery. Where a monk lives is a monastery. If I live here on this rock, it's a monastery because this monk's living here. It doesn't mean a big building with gold Buddhas, flashing lights or flags, depending on where you are. It's not this. Okay. So someone's, I won't read the whole thing because I'm not sure it's that basically someone's written in saying that it's good that I keep my phone on airplane mode, because it what does it do if I don't? It will affect all biological life. Okay, well, I'm not disagreeing with that particularly. I think me just turning my phone off onto aeroplane mode is going to make very little difference to the world environment, however, because I'm probably the only one that does that, except on an aeroplane, and then most people don't even bother with it on the aeroplane these days. Now, yeah, I know in the 80s mobile phones were different. They used a different frequency, and I found I was a businessman, and we had mobile phones when they were first around. Holding it on my ear, talking in public, hands-free didn't work in those days. That came much later. They had it, but it would interrupt it didn't work. So your phone was glued to your ear all day, working, all your waking hours. My head used to literally heat up and vibrate, so I had to keep changing sides. And this was because it was the same as a microwave oven. It was like putting my head in a microwave oven. So of course, biologically, it was having a terrible effect. So ever since then, I've only ever used my phone with an ear thing or on a wire. Well, now you can have them even without a wire, but then of course you have some radio thing going on. But I never put phones to my head anymore because, you know, I had this notion that it could give you brain cancer or something. But they've changed this now. I think they're a little safer and people do have to use them, but generally people use them on hands-free. And yeah, of course, electromagnetic fields and goings on has an effect on nature, but then this is the universe. We can't all we're doing with radio frequencies is using what's there, jumping on board and sending messages along. We're not necessarily increasing or changing them much. We might be redirecting them. However, I mean, I'm sitting here in this suburb of Bangalore where there are these pylons around which you can hear and feel. If you walk under them with an umbrella, the umbrella electrocutes you, even though they're very high up. So you have to put the umbrella down. In the dry, you use an umbrella for the sun, shade you from the sun, you see, so it's not the water. So there's very powerful, hundreds of thousands of volts zooming up and down these wires, which is also creating terrible things in negative ions and things in not only biological, but I think it has psychological effects on people which are not good. So yeah, I agree with what you're saying in a way, but I think we can all go into nature, turn our phones off and avoid these things when it's possible to do so. But I think it can get a little bit too obsessive if you go around thinking everyone should turn their individual phones off and thinking that will make a difference, because it won't. I mean, if I turn on 1,000 phones and balance them on my head, it will have no way the same effect as these pylons are probably having on my brain over this 3 months, which are literally radiating negative ions. If you could see them, it would be like smoke or black things. You can get these little machines in the West you put in your house which are the opposite. They produce whatever ions are good for you, and these things produce the ones that are bad for you. Not to mention all of the other radio waves going on around the world. But what you're seeing now between me and the phone, okay, there is a radio connection with the mic, but just light is another frequency, sound is another frequency. Who knows what frequencies we do not detect with seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting and touching. They're just varying levels of frequencies. We could spend our lives on this bandwagon protesting about this and that. We're going to get nowhere. Nature is a very powerful thing. The world will end of its own accord through the powers of nature, the universe. We don't do it any favours, and we may assist in its demise, and as individuals we can do the best possible, but as long as we don't get too obsessive and make that our main goal in life, then all we can do is our very best. So, not sure I really got to the point of I'm not sure what the point of the yeah, I mean, it is good. I don't think it makes a great deal of difference, though, putting on an airplane mode, or you turn the data off. I think these things, even on airplane mode, I turn everything possible off on it, actually, location and all of these things. Another reason, to try and save its battery power, because I don't always have the opportunity to charge them up. And obviously if it's sending information here, there and everywhere to Google and to all these different places that it keeps asking permission to do so, then it must require some power. So I turn all of those things off. And yes, we can do that, but I don't do it because I think it's going to save lives. I do it because it saves the battery for a bit longer. Because this thing in these pylons are going to do a lot more harm than any amount of these little things. So how are we doing? I think that's oh no, a couple more. So I don't know how long I've been speaking. What's the time? No, we're okay. Actually, I didn't know what time I started, so I don't know why I'm saying that. Right, someone's saying, that's just someone saying some nice things. Thank you for saying nice things. Actually, one comment here, it's saying a nice thing. You see that it's translated from, I think, Polish, so it's probably a strange translation, but it translates as I'm professional, which I thought that's an interesting way of giving me a compliment. But then I realised, well, it's a translation. But actually, I am, if you think of it, professional, because this is my livelihood. My livelihood is not of wages, it's not money, it's not a salary. It's to go out and get food each day and support us locally, and you yourselves supply the ability to have that food each day to keep me alive, to practice the holy life for another day. So that is my profession, that is my livelihood, as in right livelihood in the Noble Eightfold Path. Monks are allowed to go in the morning between dawn and noon and beg for their food and finish it before noon. So early morning, beg for their food and finish it before noon. That is our profession. So yeah, I'm professional in that respect. Other than that, I'm not sure. And then someone talking about different religions all believing in this, but generally all religions teach how to, you say become yourself. I say, well, I know with the exception, I think this might be a translation error also. In Buddhism, we're really, it's a religion of not becoming and a religion of not self. But it's similar to all other religions in that it's a religion of kindness, generosity and moral virtue. So developing wholesome mind states, reducing unwholesome mind states. And the way we do this is with this practice of meditation, samadhi. So I will apologise for the maybe interruptions there have been with wind and any movement if it's made you feel a little seasick. I hope it didn't. I hope you could close your eyes. Appreciate you watching. I hope there's some comments, some content there that is of some use to you. If so, please then use it, and if not, then just put it aside for now. But if you oh dear, sorry, I won't tell you what that cow's doing. It's rather close, but I hope it's interesting. If so, please share it with your friends and anyone else that you might find it also interesting. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.